New Drive to Survive season is out. I binged it. I watched the whole thing. I have some thoughts on it that I wanted to share. This is season 8. I've been feeling like the last few seasons, it's gotten really stale. My biggest problem with Drive to Survive, obviously, you can tell I'm a big F1 fan. I feel like the target audience for Drive to Survive has been someone totally new to F1 who doesn't know anything about it. I haven't really enjoyed watching it that much. I feel like when I watch Drive to Survive, I'm interested because I'm seeing what someone who doesn't know anything about F1 will learn about F1. But I'm not really gaining anything from it. I feel like if someone was gonna start watching Drive to Survive and get into F1, they would have started watching at some point between seasons 1 through 7. So I was really hoping for season 8 they would do something different. There were a lot of things I liked about this season, and there were things I hated. I want to start off with the things that I liked. One of my biggest issues with Drive to Survive is they make up storylines that don't matter. One of my least favorite episodes ever is from season 1. It's called King of Spain, where they're acting like the rivalry between Carlos Sainz and Fernando Alonso is like the biggest story in F1 when no one cares about that. That's literally only talked about in Drive to Survive. I've also seen too many episodes that are like, this is the fight for 8th place in the constructors. It's worth millions of dollars. It's so important. Like, no one cares. This year, I really felt like they took a big step in the, let's say, like secondary stories. For example, the episode Strictly Business with Alpine and Kick Sauber. Instead of just having an episode about the fight for 9th place in the constructors, it's worth millions of dollars. They show the difference in management style between Flavio Briatore and Jonathan Wheatley. Flavio, he's this old style of leadership that is dying. You can clearly see why Alpine is the worst team in Formula One. One scene that really sticks out to me is when Flavio decides to have a meeting with Gasly and Colapinto. You know, Colapinto, he's struggling. He's behind Gasly a little bit, and he's so quick to say, like, maybe we can try something on my car, something to move the team forward. But Flavio uses this as an opportunity to say, no, you listen to me. All Flavio does is put pressure on his drivers. He makes a toxic environment for them, and it doesn't work. You compare that to Jonathan Wheatley, who supports his drivers, encourages a culture of positivity within the team, and then you see them get their podium with Hulkenberg and Silverstone. It's a very special moment, and that result made them destroy Alpine in the constructors. I also really enjoyed the Red Bull episode. I really learned a lot in this episode. Firstly, with the situation of Christian Horner getting fired, there's rumors about these different interests within the Red Bull organization of the Verstappens, the ownership group with Helmut Marko, and then Christian Horner. They seem like these 3 different parties. In the weekend media interviews that they do, when reporters ask questions, everyone has walls up. They're trying to shut these questions down. You never really get to hear what anyone actually thinks. And in this episode, Christian Horner, what he was really telling his perspective on what happened, why he thought he got fired. I thought it was so interesting to hear him openly, candidly talk about it. I loved that exchange between Christian Horner and Toto Wolff where they, texted each other. Also in this episode, there were some scenes with Liam Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda. There's a moment where Tsunoda pulls a chair out from under Lawson when they're doing an interview. And there's this other moment where Tsunoda is in Red Bull now, and he says to Lawson, like, seems like I have bigger balls or something like that. I feel like in F1, the drivers always seem like they're best friends with each other. It's nice to see that 2 drivers who have grown up racing against each other, trying to go for the same thing, the Red Bull seat. It's not like they hate each other and don't like each other, but it's just nice to see there is some tension there between them. I thought the Williams episode was great, and I also really enjoyed the episode with Mercedes and Ferrari showing Kimi Antonelli and Lewis Hamilton. I thought they didn't talk about Ferrari quite enough and just how dire the situation was in the team. Did you notice how every time they showed Leclerc an interview from him or a radio from him, he was so miserable? The situation in the team was terrible. this year. It was not just the drivers not performing, it was the whole organization. I felt like they didn't harp on that quite enough. Overall, I felt like they made good stories. If there was one thing I want someone who didn't watch Formula One last year to get from watching Drive to Survive, is I want them to understand the championship fight between Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris, and Max Verstappen. And they did a terrible job of showing this. They missed so much. The way they decided to show the most important storyline of this entire season made no sense. They did this in two kind of parts. So the first part is episode 3, the number one problem. And I thought this was a good episode. They're talking about the beginning of the season, the championship fight between Piastri and Norris, the two McLaren drivers. They bring in Nico Rosberg from Mercedes. They talk about how hard it can be to have two drivers that are both number ones. That is a good storyline, but they didn't mention Max at all. And Max is so important to the context of the overall championship. They needed to be glazing him, but they didn't mention him once. So I will help you out. In the beginning of the year, the McLarens, they're obviously so far ahead of everyone else. But Max, he's doing these incredible results. He's still getting 3rd, 4th, 5th every race. Every once in a while, doing one of these miracle, mind-blowing P1s, like in Japan or Imola. He's doing these perfect weekends, keeping himself there in the championship. But like at some point, if he's going to win, he has to start beating the McLarens, which seems impossible. In the first race of the year, Norris wins. Piastri has that spin, and he finishes out of the points. So it's a race win swing, 25-point swing. Biggest swing you can have to Norris to start the year. And then Piastri starts going off. He wins China, he wins Bahrain, Miami, and Spain. At the same time, Max's season is happening, which is very important, and they didn't mention once. I thought one key moment that they skipped over was Spain. The whole Red Bull organization made a mistake and lost a bunch of points. A crucial mistake that ends up being the difference in the championship. A late race safety car comes out. They go green with 5 laps to go. They could leave Max Verstappen out on only 7-lap-old softs with 5 laps to go, and he gains track position to get P1. It's so difficult to overtake at Spain. I think that would have won him the race. Instead, they decide to pit Verstappen for a set of new hards. That is the worst tire you could be on in a safety car restart, because that's the hardest tire to get temperature into. And on the restart, Verstappen gets this big snap of oversteer because of the tires, which kills his run down the straight. Now Leclerc is passing him, and then Leclerc hits him, which kills his run even more. Then Russell is kind of in range, sends a huge dive bomb on him, hits him off the track, and Verstappen keeps his foot in it and keeps the position on Russell. Now the team is going to make another mistake. They tell Verstappen to give the position back to Russell. Max was correct to keep the position. Even the FIA said they would not have given them a penalty if Max kept the position. So now Max is pissed. All this bullshit's going on around him. He's like, you want me to let him go? I'll freaking let him go. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the inside, let him get his nose just ahead going in the corner. So he passed me, he got ahead, and then I'm going to just send it on him in the corner, retake the position. But Max makes a mistake here. He lets Russell get a little bit too far ahead, and then he's like, oh shit, I have to make up so much now. Brakes so late, doesn't make the corner, hits Russell, gets a 10-second penalty. Now he finishes 10th and only gets 1 point, when he honestly should have won that race. They didn't mention this in Drive to Survive. Verstappen's doing an incredible job to stay there in the championship. He's going to have to be perfect the entire season to even have a chance to make up a gap on the McLarens, to be consistently beating the McLarens. Seems impossible. So that was a huge blow for Verstappen's championship. Then right after Canada, we go to Austria. The McLarens are having a crazy battle. They're fighting each other so hard right after they crashed. And in this race, Verstappen gets taken out lap 1. Honestly, that was when I was like, okay, Verstappen is not going to be able to win the championship this year. That was when I gave up. And in this race, In a heated fight on track, Norris comes out on top and finds a way to win. Then we go to Silverstone, which they did cover. I thought this was a good point to leave off on. I wish they talked about Max. But overall, up until this point, I think they're doing a pretty good job of showing the championship fight. I just can't believe they skipped over Austria. Lando has to fight so hard for this win. Then he goes to Great Britain and wins again. Then in Hungary, Norris gets, in my opinion, his best win of the entire season. Piastri is quicker. Everyone's doing a two-stop. And Norris thinks, you know what? My only way to win this race is if I just stay out and do a one-stop. That's his only shot, and he takes it. Piastri catches him with a few laps to go. He does an incredible defense and holds him off and wins the race. That was a huge swing of momentum. That was a shot of adrenaline in his season that he needed. So much momentum going into the summer break. Also in this race, Verstappen genuinely qualifies 9th, finishes 8th. Nothing happened. They were just so slow. The championship is not even being talked about for Verstappen at this point. Even if they could win a race, that'd be incredible. We come back to Zandvoort. It's kind of back to business as usual with Piastri being quicker. Norris is in second. And then Norris has an engine failure. He was just starting to build this momentum back. And then he just has this kick in the nuts. Piastri now has a 34-point gap to Norris. This is the biggest deficit Norris has to his teammate Piastri. And this is the biggest deficit Verstappen has. 104 points to championship leader Piastri. This is such a crucial moment in the year. This is where Verstappen and Norris's comeback start. And they haven't talked about any of these races so far. And there's so many I'm still going to tell you about. Then we go to Monza, where Verstappen pulls off a miracle and wins a race. Honestly, just incredible performance from him. His teammate is fighting with freaking kick. There's no way this car should be winning races. Just an unbelievable performance. For that one race win. You're not even thinking about the championship being on at this moment. Then we go to Baku. This was where we saw Oscar Piastri crack for the first time. He crashes in sprint qualifying. Then he jumps the start, messes up the start, goes back to last, then crashes on the first lap of the race. He's been perfect this whole season. Norris also had a pretty bad weekend. He finished 7th. And Verstappen wins again. Incredible. At this point, you're still not even thinking about the championship for Verstappen. Then moving forward to Austin, both McLarens get taken out at turn 1 of the sprint race. Now, it's only a sprint race. They only lose 8 points compared to 25 if it was a Grand Prix. But Verstappen wins the sprint race and wins the Grand Prix. Norris finishing 2nd, Piastri finishing 5th. That's a big swing of points. You're starting to think, oh my gosh, this could actually happen for Max. And Piastri is also starting to crumble under the pressure. Then in Brazil, Piastri crashes in the sprint race and he finishes 5th in the Grand Prix. Norris wins both. Piastri gives up 23 points to Norris, who's now the championship leader. Then we get to Las Vegas. They just skipped from Silverstone all the way to Las Vegas. They skipped over the whole summer, the whole heart of the championship. They just said Max Verstappen's like a villain who keeps coming back. They showed Las Vegas as like the moment when Verstappen's championship was back on, when both McLarens got disqualified. But that was like one moment in a string of so many that made that moment so special. And really my biggest issue with it was that made Lando Norris's championship winning moment less special. Man, I was hoping that flashback where it's him going back to karting after, right when he's about to become world champion. I wanted that to make all of us cry, real tears, because of how emotional it was, because of all we just watched him go through. I was just so frustrated. Drive to Survive director, if you're watching this, I actually just want to know, do you watch Formula One? Like, do you care about F1? I just cannot understand the creative vision in skipping over 9 races where so much stuff happened. I hated the Las Vegas episode. That made no sense. Also in this episode, they were talking about Ferrari and Mercedes still. They don't matter at this point. We do not care about them. All that matters is the championship. I wish they wrapped that story up in the previous episode. I just really felt like they did not do this championship fight justice. And I thought it was such a shame. I wish instead of just having a Las Vegas episode, they took at least the first half of that episode recapping the season, what they missed from Silverstone to Las Vegas. Instead of just saying Max Verstappen's like a supervillain, they should have shown why everyone's saying that. In the previous episode, everyone's saying they are putting all their money on Oscar Piastri. He was the favorite by far. They didn't show Lando's comeback at all. And they didn't show Piastri cracking at all. I just thought all three of the championship protagonists had these incredible highs and crushing lows. And they just didn't show any of it. Yeah, that made me really frustrated because someone who didn't get to watch all the races last season is going to miss out on the real championship fight. They're just going to see this half-assed Drive to Survive version, and I really think that's such a shame. Also, it definitely gets docked a point for Will Buxton saying qualifying decides the grid on Sunday. We don't need that. In Season 9, we don't need someone to say shit like that. We don't need the tone of Drive to Survive to be, here's the sport that you've never watched before. We're going to explain it to you. Make it for me and make it for you. Because if you're watching this, you're a racing nerd too, just like me. I would say overall, this season had some of the best episodes I've ever seen in Drive to Survive, but they did a terrible job of explaining the most important story of this year. So I would give it a C. And it's the best season. I hope they make season 9 and beyond different. I hope they make it with a different tone and direct it towards a different audience. Anyways, thanks for watching. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Peace out.